So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. In the last episode we saw things happen such as Egypt go communist, we had a pretty big war over in Eastern Europe, we had some land exchange up here, and quite a few other things throughout the world, so yeah, I think we should just get right into it, shall we? So first off we come to the alliance layer and we take a look at the CEU, and they are going to be getting a new member. A new member that they're going to get is actually going to be this lavender country up here. So these guys, they're not really part of China, but they were heavily influenced by them. So yeah, they're going to join the alliance. We do also see Neo Persia then join up with the Arrow alliance to kind of counteract this, since these two are kind of having a small rivalry at the minute. But sticking in this area, we have something interesting happening, and unfortunately for Sumatra, they're going to be getting invaded once again. But it's not for the same reason as the last few times. So firstly, we have these guys making a landing here. They also make a landing near the capital and take it pretty much straight away. And these guys are going to move up the coast and basically just annihilate this country. They rush down the island and take over these few major cities just like this and these islands. And very quickly the country is completely destroyed as the final major city is found. Or not found, but taken, and eventually they'll just surrender. So, pretty simple peace treaty. So we see a very simple peace treaty here, as these guys will simply just have a change of government, and that change is going to be from monarchism to fascism. So that's what we see down here in Indonesia. We do see it happening in other places, strangely enough, such as the influence on this grey country is going to get too much, and their flawed democracy is going to end up getting a fascist leader. That is enough of ideological stuff for this episode, so let's focus on some other things. And first it's going to be the Canadian Union. So in the last few episodes the Canadian Union has kind of expanded into this area. They also got Newfoundland. This is completely free unions as well, so they're probably one of the most democratic countries in the world. I know this is not like the Unitarians made this work, so it's completely different. But we have Quebec, who is kind of struggling with their economy at the minute, deciding to have a vote. It says, do you want to join the Canadian Union or stay an independent state? And in the vote, the majority of the people, about 60%, decide to join the Canadian Union. However, a lot of them, obviously 40% don't, so it's going to kind of cause a little bit of controversy, but they'll be able to slowly integrate it in. And just like that, Quebec is in the Canadian Union. And slowly the Canadian Union is starting to become a huge power in the Americas. But anyway, moving away from this over here, let's go to Europe as we need a daily nuclear bomb update. So in the last two episodes we saw Sweden create their first one and the Dark Red Union now has 3. And this number is going to change. So I'm going to say that by this point the race is probably start now, and these guys are going to start like producing nuclear bombs a lot faster than they did before, considering the kind of rivalry they have now. And the Dark Red Union goes up from 3 bombs to 7. And they do actually have one in another territory. Let's see where that is. Oh wow. So the Dark Red Union decided to put 1 bomb inside of Italy. And this is going to cause a bit of concern for Sweden, because why? Another country this is going to cause concern for is Sicily. Because it's, again, why are you doing this? What's the point? As Sicily is going to start thinking maybe these guys are going to try and attack this. These guys are going to try and attack us. But anyway, moving up to Sweden now. They're going to go all the way up to 4, which is quite good considering the fact that they were just at 1 in the last episode. But yeah, they're at 4. Anyway, we're actually going to see a war now, which that rhymes so cool. This war is going to be over with the Cyan team. And what's going to be happening is, you guessed it, Sweden and Russia are both going to be invading this country. So these guys are a pretty new country. I mean, not really, they are a very old country historically. But they were just born after World War II and they're immediately getting jumped now by Sweden and the former owner of Russia. But one of the countries is not going to like the fact that Russia is expanding back into their old lands. It's actually a former Russian country themselves. And that is going to be the Grey Russian country here, who just at the start here, but will start their own invasion into Russia. Russia is obviously nowhere near the strength they were before World War II. And we can see that with Grey Russia pushing quite far into them. And if I haven't mentioned already, the Square team is supporting the Cyan and Grey Russian countries here, so it's going to let them push back a bit more. And with a lot more Dark Red Union equipment and stuff coming in now, with volunteer troops and new weapons as well by the Dark Red Union, they're going to be able to push back quite a bit against Russia. And they'll also make a fair pushback against Sweden, even pushing over and making a reconnection with this lake. But Sweden has other plans, as they will, ski across this region of Kola and land in here. yeah, this is actually done in the middle of the winter, so it's very impressive. The Swedish have a insanely good special forces army, which will allow them to once again wrap around this lake and basically dominate this war. However, one country that's not dominating is Russia, as they can just not seem to ever get a grasp of anything in a war. As for the last few wars they've had, they've done terribly, and Russia is truly the Italy of this timeline. Like, they really are. Except for the fact that they used to be really strong, but just never use their power correctly, which is a lot like Italy, you know. They will kind of sprout out and grab this city here. However, Russia is going to start locking in now, and then finally start a pushback against this Cyan country, with help of Sweden, obviously, who is, you know, still kicking ass against this Russian country here. And he even makes another ski landing here, which is quite cool, actually. They're doing very well in this war. But another country that's doing incredibly well is going to be Grey Russia. As with tons of Dark Red Union equipment coming into them, they'll basically be able to get actually quite near to the Russian capital and start a big spearhead into it. Eventually they'll actually be able to take the capital of Russia, and for the third time in history, the Russian capital has been captured by outside powers. Actually no, this is the fourth time in history, so yeah, the Russians have lost the capital quite a bit. And this is going to cause Sweden to be like, oh, for God's sake, can't you just defend yourself once? But what they're going to now try and do is start a better offensive into the Cyan country, so they can connect up with the Grey country and send more reinforcements down into Russia. You may say, why can't they just go through here? And they can, and they are doing that, but they just cannot get through this place. This is very heavily guarded by lots of volunteer troops going from the Dark Red Union, who have a strong distaste for Sweden. The Dark Red Union is quite a nationalistic country, obviously, with all the years they've been torment through with Germany, obviously genociding a lot of the people. But they are finally, they are sending a lot of troops over to help out with Grey Russia. And how would they be doing this? Well, I don't know. I mean, they're decent friends with Albania, so they'll probably be let through the Bosphorus Strait, and we already know Ukraine doesn't like Russia, so they're probably supplying this country. With a lot of Swedish reinforcements now arriving, actually, we have a small pushback in a recapturing of the capital city. So it wasn't really a small pushback, it was more of a large pushback, but who cares. However, the Grey Russians will be able to make the front line large out a bit, and kind of push more towards the capital city, but it's not as spearheady anymore, it's more thick now. However, they will be able to push back in the north against Cyan Russia, and they're doing a lot better here, obviously. Cyan Russia is a much weaker country than Grey Russia, and the capital city just got captured. So yeah, but we now have another landing being made over here, which is strange. We even have the Swedish being able to take this island, just like this. And they even make several landings on this island, even though it's probably not too necessary, but they will do it anyway. And they'll come down and capture this city, which really isn't that big at all, it's more of like a massive town. And this country will kind of start to collapse. As you know, their main country, or the main city, which is the capital, has been captured, and there's not really any population in the rest of the country, except for here. But it's not that big of a city, so it's not really like there's anything good there. So very quickly, this nation will start to fall into quite a bit of anarchy. And we can basically just quickly speed this up now, and you can very easily see that these guys, yeah, they're not doing very well, and they'll lose basically all this land. That was a bit of an exaggeration, because the Grey Russian country is actually going to make efforts to occupy these guys. Now, I'm not going to do it like I normally do with colour in the colour, because that kind of like, it kind of shows that they're like invading them where they're really not, but they're just occupying the bordering regions so they don't get invaded by the Russians. However, Russia, with now tons of Swedish help, will have thousands or more troops to now advance down to this front line with Grey Russia and finally start their own invasion. Coming around and capturing this major city, the Russian or more Swedish offensive is going incredibly good. I just had a bit of an what? And it's going even better down here, as they'll be able to push back against the invasion forces pretty much close to the border, recapturing both cities down here, and even completely kicking the invasion out of this country. And this is this time where the Cyan Russian country will completely surrender at this point. They are dead. Now it's full steam ahead into the Grey country, and they are really not doing well. And if it couldn't get any worse, we have a monarchist rebellion happening. So in these two regions here, it'll be like a monarchist rebellion kind of thing. And you may ask, why are they doing this? Well, one, this country is a monarchy here, and these guys want a strong king who can stand their ground against any country that tries to invade them. And these guys up here, well, they're basically just Swedish funded, so, I mean, there's the same rebellion, but they're kind of different groups. They will work together to try and topple the government of this country, and with the kind of, loads of stuff coming in. What? With all the troops coming in, it's going to help these guys a lot. Alright, now the Dark Union will send loads of troops up to this country to hopefully try and alleviate it. However, it's not going to work, as the Russians, backed by Swedish forces of course, will simply just be able to plough through the rest of this country. And just like this, we have the capital being captured by the monarchist rebellion, and eventually the people left in this city will just decide to join these monarchist rebellion. And we have the surrender of the Great Russian country. So let's take a look at the peace treaty. So this peace treaty looks terrible. First, we have the Russians getting this land here from both the countries. They take a few provinces from the Grey one and the capital metropolitan areas of the Siam one. Sweden is going to take all of this land here, a lot of land. They'll also take this island here, as well as these ones, to kind of just show their dominance. And these two nations will be left with new governments. Formerly they were both flawed democracies, but now they will both be turned into monarchies. And just like that, the part over here in Europe has changed a lot, and these guys are even thinking about possibly uniting in the future to form one kind of big Russian union. So yeah, who knows, that could definitely be a future plan. Anyway, coming down to Africa now, we have Morocco deciding to invade a nation, and that's going to be this Mauritanian country here. And the reason they give for this is because there was kind of a bad thing that happened in this city here. This is one of the most populated Moroccan cities, and what happens is that a terrorist organisation blew up a few buildings in this country, and it killed quite a lot of people, and they were blaming it on this Mauritanian country. Did they do it? Well, technically, yes and no. It was a group inside of this country that did it, but it wasn't the actual government of the country. They had nothing to do with this, but they're going to get invaded anyway. So the Moroccans will start over here. They are a top 10 power, so yeah, they're going to be a lot stronger. Also, they were the most developed regions of the Portuguese colony that was kind of around this region here. They have a lot of development in these regions even, and they've been able to keep it up and modernise it a lot. And very quickly they're able to use their quite advanced military to capture the capital of this country and move down into this final major city, and the rest will just surrender. And for peace treaty wise, it'll just be full annexation. They think that the government is too dangerous to exist, even though they didn't cause a terrorist attack. That's what they say, and yeah, that's what's going to happen. So now let's take a look at Egypt. Now in the last episode we did see that Egypt turned into a communist regime. And in this universe, communism, as well as fascism, is obviously very expansionist. So, you guess what's going to happen. The blue team is going to declare war on the pink country in Sudan. This was a pretty quick declaration, and they quickly put their super advanced military into this country. Now recently Egypt has definitely modernised their military a lot. They were very embarrassed during the Second World War. They lost a ton of land, and also a load of their people died. So they're trying to redeem themselves in a new government. And Egypt is going to be able to utterly destroy the Sudanese country. However, the one place they're able to do alright is over here in this region, as they'll start to push up into the Egyptians. However, troops are arriving, so I'm not sure how long that's going to last. I mean, it's not as valuable as this, as Egypt completely cuts off the coast from the Sudanese country. And basically, the Sudanese country, a lot of their population does want to be with Egypt. They'll actually colour in the places that want to be now. So basically, everything down in this region wants to join up with Egypt. And quite a few people in this capital area also do. So if Egypt annexed this country, it wouldn't really do too much damage, and they wouldn't have that much instability. However, we then see them go down the Nile River basin, and this is going to probably kill this country, as Egypt will head down this Nile River area, and basically they actually use a lot of their navy to kind of come down this area, which is quite smart. And they eventually arrive at this major city here, and even sprout out and grab at this one. And at this point, Egypt can just basically sprout out and grab this one, and they also launch an attack from the border to grab this one. There are only two major cities left in Sudan, and this one will easily be taken care of with a spearhead, as well as the capital, which the Egyptians will dart out from the coast and grab this one. And eventually, once the Egyptians push back over here, the Sudanese country is just going to go ahead and surrender over to the Egyptians. So let's take a look at the peace treaty. In this peace treaty, we have full annexation and incorporation into Egypt. Now, I'm going to say that the red team was thinking about getting involved in this war, but they didn't, because there's an invasion that they want to do in this episode, and they're going to need a lot of troops to do so. I actually did record a completely separate part of this video where the red team did kind of go and invade into Egypt, but I don't want to do that anymore because there's another event that has to happen which I want the red team to be a lot stronger for. So you'll have to wait and see what that is. And just like that, Egypt will expand a lot, and now they're fully communist. They have this entire Sudanese region. And also over in Florida, we take a look at the ideology layer again, because they're going to be having a dictatorship come into power. So in the country there's elections, and the guy that wanted to be a dictator won the election, and even though it's a full democracy, it just shows that this can just transfer into a dictatorship. So they'll turn into that, but we just go down south to a border nation to see maybe another thing happen. Now, in this area, this is the area where the most indigenous population in the Americas live. They inhabit all of this area here and also this tiny blob. And they are in favour of basically bringing back the old sort of country that was here. Now, if you remember, there was a country that had the same colour, but it obviously wasn't the exact same country. And it was there a long time ago before Portugal came and colonised this whole bit. And these guys want to bring it back, and they want to be a monarchy, obviously. Sweden is very fond of this. The country that's not and wants to keep the original democratic government, the Dark Red Union. So we have our second proxy war breaking out as tensions go to a point where they can't calm back down. So over here we have this entire bit like this, breaking away from the original government, and let's let the war commence. They'll also be popping up in this region over here, and yeah, they are heavily being supplied by Sweden. Now I know that Florida is a Security Council member and they are a dictatorship, which is quite rare, but the dictator is quite fond of the FS, so they're going to stay in it, and they are more probably by this point allied with Sweden, considering the fact that they don't like the Dark Red Union mingling in all these conflicts around the world, which Sweden's doing the exact same thing, but it's weird. Anyway, with Swedish forces arriving first, we have them quickly invading into this country. They took over this coastal area here and even managed to capture the capital. This is a very supported government, and it's not a bad monarchy, it's a pretty good monarchy. But one bad feature it does have is it wants to kind of introduce a sort of pedestal, but like a weird sort of, if you're an indigenous population you get treated better than the rest kind of system. Basically anti what we'd usually have in the old era. But they completely take over this entire part of the coast here, and the Dark Red Union forces are being stumped. Now basically what they kind of have to do with the journey is they'd have to go from over here and they'd have to go through this area of the Caribbean. Unfortunately that's not going to work because these guys probably aren't allowing the Dark Red Union access through here. The other way they'd have to go around is going like this down through this South American area. However, I don't know what the stance of this like kind of little island country is. I'm sure they wouldn't mind it, but at the same time I really don't know. So I'm going to say they take the second route, and by using it they are able to make a landing over here. They will rush into this Yucatan area, trying to cut this off. I'm actually going to cut it in as a Dark Red Union invading colour because it does look better. I mean, it's not the old government, it's more just the Dark Red Union. But they'll be able to do this and cut the country into two. Oh, and by year time, I say we're probably around the maybe 1947 by this point, but definitely in the late 1940s. So that is the kind of start of time it is. They'll quickly encircle around the area of the Yucatan Peninsula, and let's let the big fighting commence. As we have the old government quickly falling, and it's going to get invaded. We have this major city being grabbed by the rebellion, and they'll quickly go up here and take over a lot of this land. And they may say, hey, the Dark Red Union, they're the strongest country in the world, they'll be able to do really good here. And unfortunately, this is kind of like their Vietnam. They find it very hard as these guys are using very good guerrilla fighting. Now, I don't think it's very jungly in the Yucatan Peninsula. It might be. I mean, Central America definitely is. But they are finding it very hard to push through here because they are just using some really advanced war tactics even for this like thing. And also tons of Swedish help is being transported to Florida, so it's really like not helping them. We then have the rebellion grabbing another major city, and the government, which is probably camping out on this one now, is very scared. For the Dark Red Union will be able to kind of push up and try to grab into this major city, which is the capital of the rebellion, and they'll successfully do so, and they'll attempt to find the monarch, but unfortunately they have news that he has fled to the old capital of the country. But that's when it hits. From many different sides now, Floridian troops will start to flee in to this area of the Dark Red Union. Not the Dark Red Union, but of the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, they're not directly at war with each other, but they are fighting with troops against each other. So they send in volunteers. I guess you could say this is one of the craziest proxy wars. And it does get really bad once the Dark Red Union troops have they're stationed in this region. They can have a pretty big skirmish with the Swedish troops. Did I say that they're in this region? No, they're in this region, and they're going to have a skirmish, a pretty big one with the Swedish troops. It's going to be quite bad. That's going to cause lots of tension once again. But the Swedish troops are going to be able to do better than the Dark Red Union troops, considering the fact that Sweden has a lot more trained army. Now, the Dark Red Union, don't get me wrong, Don't get me wrong, the Dark Red Union has a bigger army, but Sweden, they have all this cold terrain up here. They have to train their army a lot better, which could be worse actually because they're not used to dealing with hot terrains down here. But I mean, they have this down here. they are this sort of port, so who knows. But the Swedish will be able to get to the Pacific coast now, a pretty vital part. And they'll capture this entire area where Dark Red Union troops are stationed. And oh yeah, it's time for that big Floridian offensive. As after a few weeks of blockading, they'll finally make their landing and basically on all these sides that Dark Red Union connects to the coast. And making a big landing up here with tons of troops, probably about 100,000. And the Dark Red Union troops are pretty much stuck down here. So what they're basically going to do is they'll now resort to other strategies. And that's going to be bombing the hell out of all the towns here and committing horrible war crimes, which is not going to get them too much liking from the world. What I remember that is a lot of countries are going to start to try and disassociate with the Dark Red Union, considering the fact that they're, killing innocent civilians who've done absolutely nothing wrong. And it is kept quite secret, so not too many countries know about this, but a few do, and they'll just start to be like, what? And eventually, all these Dark Red Union troops will have to flee, using lots of planes, I guess, and a lot of them do die, but some make it back home, and they'll live to tell the tale of their war in the Yucatan. And pretty much by this point, all Dark Red Union troops have been fleed. And what this means is that there's going to be a massive offensive, and by this point, the entire country will be captured, and this 3-year-long war has just ended. The original government lost, and we have a new monarchist government of the old kind of country. The same name of the country, the same history of this country will come back, and yeah, the old one is actually back. So this peace treaty here, simply enough, they'll just have a new government which will place their capital in the Yucatan Peninsula, and yeah. So Dark Red Union finally loses the proxy war. I mean, not finally, because they've only won one. Well, speaking of these guys, they're going to be added to the alliance. So yeah, these guys will be added to the alliance. Sweden ain't just going to let that slide, so they're actually going to add Mexico to this alliance, and this is going to really piss the Dark Red Union off. So we'll have to see where this takes us in the next 2 episodes. However, now we do come over to Japan as, well, their economical alliance is going to fully collapse. There's just so many disagreements at this point. The Great Depression's ended, it's not really needed anymore. So it just full on collapses, just like that. It's gone. And anyone who likes this alliance, sorry, it's dead. But for the final event of this video, we see a massive event happen. Up over here, the red team has been preparing this moment ever since World War II ended. Will finally try and eliminate their final threat of sovereignty. After preparing for over 10 years, after preparing for over 15 years, the Red Team will march their troops into Neo-Persian territory, quickly capturing many major cities. The war strategies are very concentrated and practiced as if they've been doing this for years, which they have, and their troops are very equipped to fight in this terrain, and they'll quickly be able to take over a lot of land from the Neo-Persians. In the next episode, we'll see the Third War of Arabia happen. And yeah, I never thought the War of Arabia would be this relevant to the series. Anyway, I'm going to thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.